Hood scoops and air induction systems are one of the most least understood aspects of any performance car. Here's the important stuff you need to know.
Is that how you're going to be? Because I'm trying to
I
frame
don't
my
even
shot.
know. What?
I'm trying to frame my shot, so you tell me how you're going to stand.
Okay, right here.
Action.
Now before you can really talk about scoop function, you have to understand a thing called the boundary effect. That's an area of air that sticks close to the surface of the hood of the car. While the car may be moving at 100 miles an hour, the air within the boundary layer might only be moving at 10 miles an hour. And in some cases, depending on what's around it, it could be actually going backwards. It does strange things, the boundary layer. It also changes from car to car because of the frontal profile of it. It changes from the area front to back on the hood, and it also changes according to the speed that you're going. At 10 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour, there is no boundary layer. At 100 miles an hour, it's doing a lot of stuff. Because of the boundary, short scoops like these, which are the most common installed by the factory on performance cars, offer almost no ram air effect at all. They're actually cold air induction, and it does help, but it doesn't actually force feed any air into the engine. There's no ram air effect regardless of what it says on the side of the scoop. They can also become a liability on much faster cars because of the Bernoulli effect. When the air is hitting this area high enough, it'll create a low pressure area underneath and actually suck air from the scoop. The same thing applies to shakers, like Chrysler used on the E-bodies, Ford used on a bunch of cars, and even Pontiac on the Trans Am. Pontiac turned the shaker around backwards to try to get a cleaner air shot. Some models didn't even pretend to have ram air, like this Roadrunner. In '68, these side-facing scoops weren't functional at all, but in '69 they used the same hood and changed it so that they had upward-facing vents, and that ducted cold air into the carburetor. The first boundary layer scoop in production was in 1969 on the A12 Roadrunners and Super Bs. That was a boundary layer hood that actually the scoop sat about 1.5 inches above the surface of the hood. So basically anything that came through had a straight shot into the carburetors. The last of the great no-science hood scoop were these '68 Hemi Dart and Cuda ones. It was just a big gaping hole. Boundary layer, above the boundary layer, birds, beer cans, anything that got in its way found its way into the carburetors. Now around the same time in 1969, the snorkel scoop started to evolve. American Motors was actually the first to use something like this on a production car. I think they were actually the only ones to use something like that on a production car. It looked very similar to this, but with the scoop facing slightly upward. It was a '69 Rambler Scrambler. Badass looking car all the way around. But you can see the idea behind the snorkel is to completely isolate the boundary layer and have that fresh pull come right into the mouth of the scoop. Now, around 1970, when Pro Stock got started, the aerodynamics weren't quite figured out on these things yet. And some racers found that the air coming in through this scoop directly in the airstream was pulling air and fuel from the top of the carburetors. That's where the grump lump came from. Jenkins just encased the carburetors in a box with a small opening at the front and a big opening in the back. It gave some cool air effect, but no ram air effect. Cowls are another category of scoop. We don't have one here to demonstrate with, but the principle's the same as this. At speed, the air hitting the base of the windshield goes in two different directions. Most of it wants to go up and over. Some of it wants to turn around and come back this way. And that's why manufacturers put the air intake vents for the interior here in the cowl. NASCAR racers discovered early on, around 1960, 61, that there was, at the speeds they were running, there was enough positive pressure here in this area to force feed the engine. And so they started to run ductwork under the hood that ran from these vents to the carburetor. Now, a cowl hood can work one of two ways. It could be a vent. The air coming through the grill, through the radiator, and around the engine has a greater velocity than the air trying to come in off the base of the windshield. So it'll actually evacuate pretty much everything that's under the hood and provide a colder charge to the intake that way. Or if it's sealed to the air box, it'll pull from here. The thing with the cowl hood is that for it to have any real effect on engine performance, you've got to be going really fast. Now, one of the best places to put an actual high velocity cold air charge into your engine is from under the bumper. Oldsmobile had a really cool setup that mounted a pair of scoops under here with ducts that ran to a sealed air cleaner. Ford did something similar with their factory race cars, with their quad light setup. They eliminated a pair of the headlights and ran ducts from that to a sealed air cleaner. And that's where one of the most unusual scoops in muscle car history comes from, the Teardrop. The Teardrop was actually one of the coolest looking scoops ever fitted to a hood. But it's not a scoop. It's actually a very well-designed evacuation device. The cars that ran teardrops had this setup: a sealed air cleaner and a ductwork that ran to the headlights. If you tried to use a teardrop as an actual scoop and sealed it to the carburetor, you would actually create a low-pressure area over the top of the carburetor and kill your performance. The bottom line is that there's no shortage of ways to get air into your engine. But like anything else with hot rodding, one size does not fit all. It's up to you to determine what your car, what your combination, and its operating circumstances is going to want for maximum effect. The thing to remember when planning out a system is that we think of air as a gas, but it actually performs a lot more like a liquid. It sticks to things, it flows in certain ways, and keep all of that in mind as you're sketching out your system. Free horsepower.